Today on Top Facts, we have a large selection of the strangest, most disturbing, and controversial video recordings of unidentified objects. In some cases, it might be a rare atmospheric phenomenon. In others, it is about technology that is simply not shown to the public. But there are also episodes where too many things do not add up to a simple and convenient explanation. And the further we go, the more unpleasant these frames will become, because among them are objects that seem to react to people, disappear synchronously, interfere with the operation of equipment, and appear next to the military. I wish you a pleasant viewing. In the northeastern part of Italy, an eyewitness filmed a small object of a strange shape, calmly and slowly drifting over an open space. At first glance, there was nothing spectacular about it. No bright lights, no sharp acceleration, and no obvious threat. The object almost did not change its course and moved at a very steady speed, as if it did not need to fight either the wind or turbulence. It did not make a sound, did not blink, and did not try to camouflage itself as familiar equipment. It just moved over the fields, as if this was an absolutely normal thing for it to do. During an evening baseball game, one of the spectators noticed a bright dot in the sky, hovering over the trees. He zoomed in on the image, expecting to make sure it was an airplane or a star. But the object did not behave like either one or the other. It remained in place too confidently and for too long. What is especially creepy in such scenes is how an everyday event suddenly cracks in half. Just a second ago, people were simply watching the game. And then, one person raises a camera, and it turns out that something is hanging over the familiar, illuminated stadium that no one around even notices. In the year 2019, residents of Kerch filmed a crescent-shaped object hovering over houses. It glowed dimly, but enough for the shape to be read clearly. The main thing is that it almost did not move. It did not rush around, did not tear to the side, and did not arrange any demonstrative maneuvers. It is precisely this minimal movement that made the scene especially uncomfortable. A crescent in the sky is a strange image in itself, because the brain instantly tries to tie it to something familiar. But when a familiar shape turns out to be out of place, not in its scale, and moreover behaves like an object and not like a celestial body, a feeling of an error in the picture of the world arises. Another episode became viral due to a very strange detail of the observation. A man noticed a disc-shaped object in the sky and began to examine it through a magnifying glass or an optical element. When he lowered it, the object disappeared from his field of vision. When he raised it again, it appeared in the same place. Such an effect instantly generated dozens of versions, from a banal optical illusion to the idea that the object was visible only in a certain spectrum or under a certain distortion of light. Yes, a skeptic here will say that such tricks are often born from the characteristics of lenses and glares. But this is exactly why the episode is interesting. It touches the boundary between what we actually see and what our vision is capable of fixing at all. In another case, a man was filming the sky and unexpectedly recorded an object that was moving with a trail of thick smoke, but it did not look like a regular crashing airplane or a rocket. Its trajectory was uneven, as if it was barely staying in the air, and yet it did not collapse before his eyes and did not go into a fall. The recording cuts off too quickly, and this is exactly what enhances its effect. The viewer does not receive an ending, which means the brain itself begins to complete the most disturbing options. Later, there was talk about a closed zone and a hasty reaction from the services, but even without rumors, the object itself already looks uncomfortable. One of the most controversial recordings was allegedly leaked by a military insider and shows a large pyramidal apparatus near Groom Lake. People in uniform can be seen around the object, and then the structure suddenly rises into the air. According to the legend, this was one of the secret prototypes, too close in capabilities to what the public usually calls unidentified flying objects. In August of the year 2025, A group of friends near Area 51, according to their words, saw two bright saucer-shaped objects hovering almost at the very ground. Light glided over their surface, and they themselves maintained a stillness that was too confident for something that could be quickly written off as a drone or a balloon. According to eyewitnesses, they were not allowed to get closer. Security vehicles appeared, and the observation had to be stopped. Yes, such stories always carry the risk of sliding into pure conspiracy theories. But here, it is not even the brand of Area 51 that is interesting. It is the behavior of the objects that is interesting. They were in no hurry to disappear. They did not flash by accident. They seemingly allowed themselves to be seen, up to a certain limit. Sometimes the strangest object gets into the frame completely by accident, and it is noticed only later upon reviewing. This is exactly what happened with a recording made against the backdrop of chaos in Yemen. Among the smoke, disorder, and general visual noise, people later saw a dark shape going into the sky at an unusual angle. It did not tumble like a piece of debris. It did not fall like random garbage. It did not look like a light object that was simply picked up by the wind. On the contrary, the movement was smooth, as if the object itself was correcting its course. Of course, skeptics have a strong argument here. The frame is too dirty to draw far-reaching conclusions. But it is in such scenes that the most unpleasant feeling is born. Because if it is an ordinary object, then it behaves too confidently. And if it is not ordinary, then an even worse question arises. Why, amidst the real chaos and smoke, did something suddenly appear in the sky that no one even paid attention to at the moment of filming? One driver in a desert area, near Area 51, filmed an episode that still seems almost abnormally composed. Low over the road, a smooth object resembling a classic saucer was moving. It was followed by patrol cars, and not chaotically, not trying to catch up, but as if accompanying it along an already understood route. It is precisely this organization that makes the recording so disturbing. If everything looked like a chase, the viewer could still calm themselves with the familiar scenario. But there is no fuss here, no sirens, no panic. There's only cold movement in one direction, as if each side perfectly knows its role. And then the object simply disappears behind a large hangar, and the video ends at the exact moment when the most interesting part was supposed to begin. A short clip from the Scottish Highlands spread not because of the image quality, but because of the behavior of the object. The metallic disc did not perform demonstrative somersaults, did not tear away from its place, and did not try to look spectacular. It simply moved across the sky evenly and calmly, and then dissolved into the clouds over the mountains. It is this kind of everyday confidence that often works stronger than something overly theatrical. An airplane can be recognized by its trajectory, a helicopter by its sound and hovering manner, a drone by the nature of its movement and lights. Here, the object seemingly intentionally did not provide a single convenient clue. It behaved like something for which flying in such a form is a natural state. After sunset, residents of Julian in California noticed a bright yellow object slowly gliding across the sky. The light was dense and even, without the characteristic blinking that everyone is used to with airplanes and drones. In shape, the object seemed saucer-like, and it moved too smoothly to be easily explained by familiar equipment. An important detail here is the reaction of the neighbors. Several people went outside almost simultaneously and began to film what was happening. And from this moment, the episode ceases to be the private story of one person. An atmosphere of collective silence arises when people do not argue, do not laugh, and do not look for a joke, but simply stand and look up. In Barcelona, a man saw a bright red triangular object hovering low over a city road. Its glow was so dense that it literally colored the space around it. The object stopped for a moment, as if looking closely at the place beneath it, and then began to slowly move away to the side. The color red, in such cases, amplifies anxiety almost automatically. It is perceived not as a neutral light, but as a signal of danger, prohibition, or the presence of something aggressive. And therefore, even a short clip leaves a stronger mark than many ordinary sightings with white lights. One of the viral recordings shows a massive object hovering over a building that many viewers took to be a government or administratively important one. Bright lights are visible below, and when zooming in, it seems as if something like lifting or interaction with the ground is happening under the object. Because of the picture quality, it is impossible to say for sure, but it is exactly this understatement that made the clip so discussed. When something strange appears not over a wasteland, but near a symbolically significant place, the story automatically seems larger. On the 13th of November, 2025, over Caracas, according to the stories of eyewitnesses, a strange glowing object was noticed, which, it was claimed, had crashed. Some said that it seemed to have round windows on the sides. Others said that it was followed by military aircraft. Soon, there were reports of a cordoned-off area and debris that was allegedly quickly collected. Stories about crashing unidentified flying objects almost always balance between myth and mass fantasy. But this is exactly why they hold attention better than most ordinary sightings. As long as the object is just flying, there's always a safe distance. But when it ends up on the ground, the plot changes completely. Here, questions already arise about traces, materials, documents, and people who have something to hide. One of the most discussed episodes began at the moment, when the sky still remained light enough to distinguish shape and direction of movement. Near the Sam Houston National Forest, a runner heard the low, heavy roar of an F-16 fighter jet. The sound itself forced him to raise his head, and it was then, over the tops of the trees, that he saw a dark object that immediately seemed wrong. It was not perfectly round. It did not look like a bird. It did not resemble an airplane or a helicopter. Rather, an uneven oval, dark, dense, strangely confident in its movement. But the most unpleasant part was not even the shape. According to the author of the recording, it seemed as if the military jets were following it, and not just coincidentally nearby. Just a few miles from the first incident, on the same day, but closer to night, an even more disturbing recording was filmed. This time, the object looked different, elongated, as if pointed at the top and bottom, with bright lights around the central part. These lights seemed to not just shine, but move in a circle, creating a feeling of rotation. And while the eyewitnesses were trying to understand what exactly they were seeing, the thing happened because of which the story spread across the net. A bright beam struck sharply from the bottom part of the object. Not blurred, not chaotic, not looking like a regular spotlight. It seemed to purposefully lay on the building, as if the object was not illuminating it, but studying it. In a matter of seconds, the camera froze, the woman's phone turned off, and later local residents spoke about short-term interruptions with electricity and wireless fidelity. Yes, a layer of rumors always quickly grows around such episodes. On the 23rd of December, 2025, a resident of Chicago went outside for just a few minutes. He did not expect anything unusual. But as soon as he looked up, 5 bright lights were already hanging over him. They did not blink like airplanes. They did not move like drones. They did not fly in a chain like satellites. They simply stood in the sky, as if someone had carefully hung 5 red-hot dots there. The eyewitness zoomed in on the image, expecting that the objects would at least begin to shift or change shape. But everything remained almost motionless. The lights hung too calmly, too confidently. And it was exactly this motionlessness that made the scene especially uncomfortable. In front of the person was something that did not try to look natural. And then the strangest thing happened. When he zoomed out the camera to capture all 5 lights in one frame again, they disappeared simultaneously, not one after another. They did not go into the clouds. They did not dissolve smoothly. They simply went out in the exact same second. Some videos frighten not with action, but on the contrary, with silence. At night in California, a man was driving home and noticed a strange glow over the roof of one of the houses. At first, he decided that it was decorative lighting or perhaps some kind of spotlight. But after just a few seconds, it became clear. The light source was not fixed on the building, it was hanging over it. When the man took out his phone and zoomed in on the image, the shape of the object seemed strangely whole, without blinking signals, without propellers, without signs that something was holding it in the air at all. It did not sway from the wind, did not change position sharply, and did not make a sound. It just hovered over a regular residential street as if it were observing it from above. The most unpleasant thing in this recording is the absence of at least some understandable logic. The object does not attack anything, does not run away, and does not put on a show. It just is. And sometimes exactly this has the strongest effect. The frames from the patrol boat seem simple, but it is precisely because of this simplicity that they are remembered. A disc-shaped object hovered over the surface of the ocean, reflecting sunlight so that its shape could be read quite clearly. It did not twitch, did not dart to the side, and did not give the impression of something light and chaotic. On the contrary, everything about it looked too composed. The crew of the boat simply looked up silently for some time, and this silent reaction in such cases often says more than any scream. When people actually encounter something strange, they often freeze at first, trying to find at least one familiar explanation. But here, judging by the recording, no one found such an explanation immediately. After the publication of the video, people argued about everything, from a fake to secret technology. Over Lake Havasu in Arizona, a recording was filmed that people still love to analyze frame by frame. A bright metallic disc was moving in the sky, smoothly rising and descending as if it was checking its own trajectory. Its movement did not look random. There was no feeling that the object was drifting under the wind or behaving unstably. Everything looked almost intentional. But the real weight to this story was added by another element. A jet airplane appeared nearby. And from this moment, a regular dot in the sky turned into something much more serious. The airplane gave viewers scale, speed, and a reference point. It became clear that we are not looking at a distant glare and not at a banal optical effect. If the recording is to be believed, the object did not show the slightest concern. It did not break away and did not disintegrate into light distortions. On the contrary, it continued to move as if the proximity of a combat aircraft did not interest it at all. At night, the passengers of a small boat noticed a brightly lit object not far from the coast. It hung low over the water, and its light changed shade, as if something alive and unstable was happening inside. The object moved slowly and then almost softly stopped, not the way regular equipment stops, but as if the very concept of inertia worked differently for it. Open water makes such episodes especially convincing. There is less visual garbage there, fewer chances to confuse the object with a lantern on the ground or a reflection in a window. If something hangs over the sea, the viewer feels this scene almost physically. The dark surface below, the emptiness around, and the light source that should not be at such a height for so long. On the roof of one of the houses in Los Angeles, a group of people noticed a glowing object that was moving in a straight line, and then began to rise higher and higher. In shape, it resembled a smooth disc. At first, someone suggested that it was a drone, and such an explanation would sound quite convenient. But the longer the recording lasted, the weaker it worked. The object was not just flying. It seemed to be walking towards a specific goal, calmly, without fuss, without characteristic twitching, until it disappeared into the clouds. Over Medellin, residents noticed a dark object of a prismatic shape, hovering over the city and slowly rotating in the air. Its very geometry already caused discomfort. People are at least culturally prepared for the image of a flying saucer. But a prism hanging over the streets breaks expectations too sharply. The object did not rush forward, did not jump in height, and did not give the impression of something unstable. On the contrary, its rotation looked measured, almost demonstrative, as if it was not trying to hide, as if it did not care at all that people were looking at it from below. In one of the quiet neighborhoods of California, Eyewitnesses noticed a low-flying dark triangular object. Bright lights burned along its lower edge, and it itself moved too slowly and too evenly for anything familiar. People stopped right in the parking lots, on the sidewalks, by their cars, and almost synchronously raised their phones. Triangular objects in such compilations always make a special impression. They seem more massive, heavier, more technological than individual lights or disks. And when such a shape passes low, almost silently, it is automatically perceived as something much more serious than just another light in the sky. One of the most fantastic videos shows a disc-shaped object, in front of which a glowing area resembling a portal appears. Then, the disc slowly enters it and disappears. It sounds almost too cinematic to be true, and that is exactly why the public divided instantly. Some called it an incredible testimony, others an immediate fake. But even if the video is fake, it still perfectly shows what exactly the viewer is afraid of. Not just a strange flight, but an object that disappears, not according to the familiar logic of space. It does not fly away, does not dissolve in the distance, but literally goes somewhere else. Late at night, a resident of a small house near the desert noticed a bright object in the sky that slowly drifted, pulsated, and even changed its visible shape. At first, it seemed hexagonal, then more round. All this continued not for a few seconds, but for almost 15 minutes. The version about rocket activity appeared quickly, but people immediately began to point out inconsistencies in time, in the nature of the light, in the too calm trajectory. And even if we leave theories aside, the very feeling from the recording remains. The object does not behave like something short-lived. It seemingly intentionally remains in the field of vision, allowing itself to be examined. In one of the viral videos, viewers saw a huge object hovering over the ground as if it were choosing a place to land. Its size was felt immediately. It was not a glowing light and not a distant dot. It was something so large that all the familiar explanations sounded almost ridiculous. The object made no noise. It did not vibrate. It did not dart to the side. It moved with frightening slowness, as if weight itself did not matter to it at all. And it is precisely the scale that turns this case into an especially disturbing one. The brain can still survive a small oddity. A huge one no longer. When something hangs in the sky, the size of which a person cannot quickly accept, an ancient fear of scale turns on. Over a quiet residential area, a camera recorded a white object of a tubular shape. It did not drift like a balloon, did not go in a straight line like an airplane, and did not rush about like a copter. On the contrary, it almost hung in the air and only slowly turned, as if choosing which side to remain visible. Such details seem like trifles, but it is they that decide whether the video will remain just strange or become truly creepy. When an object does not just glow, but behaves like something self-controlled, the viewer intuitively attributes an intention to it. And an intention in an unknown object scares much more than the shape itself. A couple was calmly walking in the park when a small object of a very strange shape appeared over them. It moved in a circle slowly and low, and by its appearance, it did not resemble an airplane or a neat drone. Rather, it seemed as if something crumpled hung in the air, almost like a piece of paper that for some reason does not fall. And it is this ugly strangeness that makes the video strong. People are used to the fact that an anomaly must be smooth, symmetrical, and futuristic. But when an object looks almost ridiculous and then begins to behave the way no garbage should behave, it becomes even more disturbing. A resident of Miami, looking at the city center, noticed 3 bright lights in the sky, lined up in a clear triangle. They did not blink and did not shift relative to each other. Against the background of the city buildings, it was especially clearly visible. The shape remained stable, and the lights themselves behaved too calmly. 1 light in the sky can be written off as anything, 2 as a coincidence. But 3 sources of light that form a stable geometry and almost do not move are automatically perceived as a system, and a system implies control. A resident of Guatemala went outside and noticed 2 cubic objects in the sky. At first glance, they could be taken for unusual balloons or air structures, but the movement almost immediately broke this version. The cubes drifted side by side, maintaining synchrony, without pitching, without random jumps, and without chaotic drifts by the wind. It is synchrony here that becomes the main argument in favor of mystery. One of the darkest plots is connected with the recording where a military airplane was preparing to land, and a bright glowing sphere suddenly appeared next to it. In the first seconds, everything looked almost routine, but then the sphere approached and seemingly surrounded the board. And then, according to the version of the authors of the story, both the airplane and the sphere itself disappeared. On the 10th of December, 2025, a group of researchers flying over the Amazonian forests noticed a large, dark gray object resembling a saucer on the ground. But this episode became famous because of what happened next. The object rose, and the pilot almost immediately reported problems with the controls and a sudden loss of altitude. It is exactly such details that make the story especially heavy, because we are no longer talking simply about an observation from the ground. This is a crew in the air. People accustomed to flights, to altitude, to equipment, and to unexpected situations. And if even they begin to speak about failures in control, the viewer perceives the episode much more seriously. And this is one of the most famous episodes of modern aviation ufology. During the day on the 7th of November 2006, United Airlines employees, ground personnel, and other airport workers at O'Hare reported a dark gray, disc-shaped object over gate C-17. It hung under the clouds, did not blink, did not make a sound, and remained in place long enough for several people to examine it at once. The main strength of this story is not only in the number of witnesses, but also in who exactly these witnesses were. These are not random passers-by in the desert. These are people who see airplanes taxiing, takeoffs, and landings every day, and perfectly understand what normal aviation equipment looks like. And if they are the ones saying that something completely unlike any known apparatus was hanging over the airport, such a story sounds much heavier. According to the stories of eyewitnesses, the object suddenly went up, piercing the cloud layer with incredible speed. And it is this sharp, almost impossible ending that made the incident at O'Hare one of the most discussed to this day. Write in the comments which case seemed the most inexplicable to you. The one where the object synchronously disappeared? The one where the equipment began to malfunction? Or those rare episodes where the unknown appeared next to the military and airports? If you want to see something similar or other topics, then like and subscribe to the Top Facts channel for compilations of the most incredible facts and videos from all over the internet. Thank you all very much for watching, and right now, watch our previous episodes, which have already appeared on your screen.